Episode 26 Don't Let Him Ruin You. Natalie didn't notice that Liam had called Bryce Daddy. Instead, she held him in her arms and looked at him worriedly. "How have you been? Are you hurt?" Liam shook his head.
"I'm not hurt. Grandma has been looking after me. Don't worry, Mommy."
After confirming that he wasn't hurt, Natalie was filled with relief. Then she realized what he had said. Grandma? She was puzzled. Only then did she see a woman wearing an expensive-looking dress sitting in a nearby summer house. She was sipping tea and watching them. She bore a resemblance to Bryce, so she was probably his mother. Natalie was surprised. Why had Liam been brought here? She was confused, but she still had to be polite. Pulling Liam up, she walked toward the lady. "Are you Bryce's mother? I hope it hasn't been too much trouble to take care of Liam." Michelle looked at Natalie. Her expression softened a little as she nodded and said, "No, I find him cute. It's not a problem." Natalie smiled gratefully. "Thank you for taking care of him." Michelle nodded. She felt that this girl was gentle and generous, with the temperament of a lady. No wonder she had raised a child as good as Liam. Her face eased a bit as she said, "It's nothing. I like him a lot. I heard that something happened to you. It's good that you came back." Natalie knew there was no point in saying any more. The Clare family did not require her gratitude, so after another word of thanks, she picked Liam up and prepared to leave. "Thank you again. I'll take him now." Liam blinked, looked at his mother, and then looked at his grandma. He felt that something was wrong, but he didn't say anything. Michelle looked at the boy and suddenly felt reluctant. "Are you really in such a hurry to leave? Do you have a place to stay?" She was the head of a very rich family, and she knew everything. She also knew a bit about what had happened to Natalie. Natalie nodded and said with sadness, "I came here because I had some things to deal with. Now that I've found Liam, I plan to go back to England tomorrow." With that, she looked at the distant sky and, lost in thought, muttered, "I won't come back again." Hearing her words, Bryce was stunned. His gaze swept across Natalie's clear and beautiful face. This mother and son had stormed in and messed up his life, and now she intended to leave. This kind of thing had never happened before. Even Michelle glanced at Liam with a slightly melancholic gaze. Then she looked at Bryce reproachfully. If her son had gotten married earlier, she would have a grandson about this age. She wouldn't need to sit here and grieve for what she had lost. After spending the past 2 days with this little boy, she had been utterly charmed by him. But in the end, he was not her grandson, so she could only sigh reluctantly. Just as Natalie was about to say goodbye to Bryce, Liam hugged his leg and asked,
"Mommy, why are we going to England? Shouldn't you be with Daddy? Why are we going away? Mommy, please don't leave Daddy."
He continued to cling onto Bryce's leg. He looked extremely pitiful. Natalie smiled awkwardly and quickly pulled him away. "Liam, he's not your dad, so don't call him that again, all right?" Tears of grief filled Liam's eyes.
"This is obviously Daddy. Why don't you recognize him?"
Seeing him like this, Natalie's heart felt sour. She could only coax him patiently. "Liam, you have to listen to me or I'll get angry." Liam let out a helpless sigh. With the weariness of an old man, he returned to Natalie feeling wronged. This scene almost broke Michelle's heart, especially Liam's tearful face, which looked just like Bryce's when he was young. Her heart became even more conflicted, but he wasn't her grandson. She did not urge them to stay, but let them leave. Bryce, on the other hand, didn't even look at Natalie and Liam. He didn't understand what was going on. He was confused by his own feelings, but he finally felt like he had gotten rid of his troubles. After leaving the Clare mansion, Natalie took Liam straight to her grandmother's house. There was no longer anyone or anything in this city that she would miss. The only person she cared about was her grandmother, who was getting older and older. When they arrived at the house, it was nearly evening. When the old woman saw Liam, she thought that Natalie's father could have caused some trouble for them, and this was the reason why Natalie hadn't returned home for 2 days, but she was so old, she could not do anything. She hugged Liam happily. She didn't ask where he had been. Although Liam had never met his great-grandma before this trip, The blood relationship between them had helped them to grow close very quickly. The old woman couldn't help but smile. Natalie felt hurt when she saw this. In order to control her, her father threatened her grandmother's life. It wasn't safe to leave her grandmother here. She wanted to take her grandmother away with them. She would be able to support all three of them in the UK. Over dinner, she said, "Grandma, I came back because I wanted to take you to England. I can take care of you. No need to trouble yourself. And I don't think I'll be able to adjust in a foreign country at this old age." She had expected her to refuse, as she had refused earlier as well. But Natalie thought of giving it a try again. And as she was about to try and persuade her, her grandmother said, "I plan to return to the countryside in a few days. I have relatives there who will look after me. I'm old, and I can't take the city anymore. I just want to go back to my roots." Natalie sighed. It was as if a pair of large hands had grabbed her by the throat and were stifling her. In the end, she did not say anything. She understood her grandmother's temperament, and she knew that no matter how much she tried, it would be useless. Still, she could not help but feel guilty, and her voice was choked with emotion when she spoke. "But, Grandma, I'm really worried about you." Grandma's wrinkled face smiled. She shook her head and said, "Natalie, compared to your happiness, mine is nothing. You still have a lot of life ahead of you, so live it well, okay?" The old woman suddenly seemed to remember something. She said sadly, "Don't let your father ruin your life, my child."